congratulations, you are now a United States Marine. And he closes my hand. And I still have that EGA to this date. And I remember bawling, like just crying.
Welcome to Goat Mountain. I'm your host, Isaac Johnson.
I went to Goat Mountain, Goat Mountain, Goat Mountain, Goat Mountain, Goat Mountain, Goat Mountain.
Welcome to Goat Mountain. I'm your host, Isaac Johnson. Today I interviewed Senior Director of Legacy Valor, John Soriano, one of the powerhouses in the solar game. We touched on his life all the way from the Marines to network marketing to building one of the biggest solar teams in the nation, how to become a top rep, how to perform under pressure, and a whole lot of tips for you top performers and people striving to be a top performer. So grab your notebooks and your pens and get ready to take some notes. It is time. Honored to have you, John. I did want to start this by honoring you. You are the main reason that I started making my content and investing in that. I saw you do it, and you gave me the advice too, and told me that I had the skill set to do it and the confidence. So I honor you for that. And much more than that, you got me here from a wee little lad of a setter that had barely ever done anything to a top performer and a leader and a mentor. And I thank you for your mentorship.
Appreciate that. And look, you did all the work. So we set the vision, we set an idea of what could happen, but you went out there, you executed it. And those are the people that I want to be around. Those are the people that I want to build with, work with, and continue to grow with. The ones that execute. Because you'll be surprised, a lot of people, they'll hear the same thing you heard, but then they do nothing about it. Or they stay in their victim mindset. But you were like, no, I'm going to go make something of myself. And you've done it. And it's just a start.
Just starting.
Start. So thanks for having me here. It's really awesome.
I am going to take notes, just like everybody watching here, because this is for me and them.
And my wife does say, note takers are money makers. So write that one down.
Listen to Josie. She's smart. Before I jump into the questions and stuff, what's new, man? I feel like I haven't caught up with you in a while. Give me a little short recap of what's new in your life. King's 1 now, right?
King's 1. Yep. He just started walking. He just took his first few steps beginning of last week.
That's awesome.
And then now he's like full-blown walking, which is crazy how in a moment you can literally go from crawling to walking. And it's just crazy because I feel like there's a message in that it can take months and months and months to build a base, which is what it took him. Right, a year to build the base that he now has, but in a week's time frame, he like exponentially grew. He exponentially learned this new skill set, and it was just so cool to kind of see it happen so fast. Because you would think it would take like weeks and weeks and weeks to learn that, but literally it was like about 5 days. Within 5 days, he's like walking pretty normal. Within a week and a half, now he's walking like he's been doing it forever. But and it's just, I'm not even used to it yet because I'm so used to seeing him crawl, which is like weird. I'm like, I see him just walking around the living room. I'm just like, I still can't wrap my head around it, you know? So yeah, so that's one. Balin just started kindergarten last week as well. So we had a lot of big milestones last week. So Balin just started kindergarten, which is huge.
That is huge.
Just crazy seeing that, like that's now that's where he's at. Like he's going to be in school for the next 12 years. And so, or longer. But yeah, so that's great. And overall, I mean, marriage is great. Josie and I are strong. Business is growing. Truly love what we get to do. I'm all about transforming lives, and love seeing many, many lives transformed and just being able to impact a lot of people, whether it's my own family or also just the people I get to work with.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Good to hear the fam's doing well. And I feel like that story of King walking, it reminds me of one of my old mentors actually used to tell me about myself. It's a story of, have you ever heard the story of a Chinese bamboo tree? You know?
Yep.
It's not it didn't just grow in 90 days. So if you don't know, the story of a Chinese bamboo tree is it takes 5 years of watering it. You got to be persistent of watering and watering and watering and watering it without ever seeing anything sprout. It's just building its roots, and it takes 5 years. But I think it's within 90 days, it grows like 30 feet or something crazy. 60 feet.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So he used to tell me that I was going to be a Chinese bamboo tree because I had the skills, I was doing all the things, and I wasn't seeing the outcome a lot at the place that I was previously. But he kept pouring into me and saying one day I would take off. Unfortunately for him, it happened to be had a different company
Yeah.
under your leadership. But as soon as I transferred soils, I guess a little bit, but I just took off in
Yeah.
90 days, really.
Yeah, and there's definitely a powerful story in that because we live in an instant gratification world where everyone wants to see things now, right? We live in a microwave era. It's like food now, Instacart era, like groceries now, Uber Eats era, like groceries now. We live in this now. And yes, maybe that's good for certain things. Like maybe it's awesome to get food in the now, but I've discovered that the best things in life take time, right? Like a home cooked meal will always be better than Uber Eats. Because it took time. There was love behind it. There was preparation, right? And so it's a powerful story, the bamboo tree. And I think, one of the things you got to understand if you want to achieve success in any realm, whether it's business, your marriage, parenting, is understanding that good things take time. And they take time because it's important to build a strong base. Because there's actually even a parable in the Bible that talks about how there's a man that built essentially a house on sandy rocks, right? And then another man built it on like a sturdy foundation. And he's like, cool. They both have their houses, but when the storm came, the one on sandy foundation fell apart. When the one that was built on solid foundation, was able to withstand that storm. And so, it's important to understand that, hey, as whatever we want to do, we need to first build that foundation, and it takes time. You don't see the growth. You don't see like you said, like the little buds on top, right? But underneath, you see the roots, and then growth can come like that. Just like my baby boy, like he just started walking like that. But that was months of him building his muscles, right? When he was crawling and, when he was like doing his little things, he was building that base, which then eventually he was able to walk from that base. So powerful story there. I actually believe that you can learn a lot from children. My children have taught me more than I've even taught them. So, which is a whole different topic, but I think there's power in like kind of observing how kids operate. Like it's cool to see. You never see a kid that thinks to themselves, you know what, maybe walking isn't for me.
Exactly.
Like they fall. Like I saw him fall, get back. He's still falling. But every time he gets back up. You never see a child be like, he falls and he just stands there and he's like, yeah, I'm done. I quit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'm done. Like I'm just going to keep crawling for the rest of my life. And what's interesting is somewhere along the way we lose that attitude. Like a lot of people lose that attitude of like, just get back up. Just get back up. Just get back up. Just get back up. And if you do that enough time, eventually the growth comes.
I completely agree. A lot of my mentees and people ask me what I attribute some of my success to. And I think a big part of it is I stay childlike, not childish, but childlike. You know what I mean? Big difference. But I'm very childlike. I'm very eager. I'm very. I go until I win. I've heard a story of a kid that he played his dad in checkers or whatever, and he lost like 11 times in a row, and the dad said, "Let's go to bed," and the kid said, "No, let's keep playing." And after like 7 more times, he won, and then he said, "All right, now I can go to bed."
Yeah.
Because he just went until he won. And like you said, we lose that along the way. But if you can stay childlike, it's a really good way to help you build some success.
Yeah, and childlike, that's great because how I look at that is you're creative. You have this, I can do anything attitude, right? You have this, like, you don't dwell in the past, right? Like I look at Balin, actually this happened just yesterday. So yesterday we had this toy gun that's like it's a rifle that shoots out Nerf guns. It's pretty advanced as it has a really like actually complex like firing system to it. And so he was shooting. I don't know how it happened, but me and my wife were talking. Next thing I know, he starts crying. And he's like, the first second you're just like, oh, whatever, it's probably minor. But then he's like really crying. And I was like, oh, okay, something serious. So we like run over. And what happened was he got his finger, like about a quarter of his finger jammed in the chamber. And it was like his finger was pinched in there. And he was just bawling. He's like, this hurts so bad. And I'm trying to figure out how to get it out. Yeah. It's been a while since I've used this gun, so I didn't know. I was like, it took me a good minute, like about 60 seconds. And so I figured out, I just had to put it on the safe. And then when you put it on safe, this like the toy automatically like essentially pulls back the chamber. And after that, he cried for like 5 minutes profusely, just cried. But here's the cool thing about, like you said, you know, being childlike, not childish, is that after those 5 minutes, And after he was done crying, he like forgot about it. Like forgot.
Yeah.
Went on his day. I promise you, today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, he won't like start crying about that moment when he got really hurt. And it's interesting because when you look at adults, right? A lot of us adults, we're crying over things that happened to us last week, last month, last year, 5 years ago. We're still crying over that. But a child, like I've never seen Balin cry about the same thing twice. Never. He falls, hurts his head, or even if he's mad at me. Sometimes maybe like he's mad at me because of something I said or because I had to discipline him and he's like mad at me. He'll tell me, he's like, I'm mad at you. But like a week later, he won't come up to me and be like, I'm still mad at you.
Yeah.
But how often do we as adults hold in resentment, hold in bitterness towards other people or towards situations that happened a year ago, 5 years? So being childlike to me, like also is like having that attitude of like truly forgiving, truly letting go, truly being in the present. Too many people are stuck in the past of past hurts, past traumas, past disappointments, where a child literally lives in the present. And that's one thing I love about Balin is like he is in the present. He doesn't care about the past. He's not too focused about the future, maybe a little bit, but he's like in the moment. He's like, cool, this is what I'm doing, and boom, that's it. Mm-hmm. And if in that moment he's hurt, cool, he cries.
Yeah.
Right? He lets it out, cool. You know, even the Bible talks about that. It's like, hey, there's a season for everything, right? There's a season for crying. There's a season for celebrating. And too often we're stuck on an old season. So just when you said childlike, it just reminded me of that because I learned a lot. I learned a lot from my kids. Like I feel like my kids teach me more than I teach them. You know, and I learned that through just like observing how they are. And I ask myself, how can I be more like that? You know, how can I be more childlike? Yes, not childish, but childlike. So that's really good.
Yeah, that is awesome. And yeah, you're always a student. You're always trying to get better. It's awesome. You take advice from everybody, even your children, huh?
And 5-year-olds and 1-year-olds.
Yeah.
You can always learn from anybody.
So you do a podcast.
Yes, sir.
The name of it is Do Hard Things Podcast. Mm-hmm. That is one of your values, right? Actually, I put my phone away, but I do have, and I didn't just do this. I swear, this has been my background for a while. These are our values, the Valor core values. There's 7 of them. First one is Do Hard Things.
Right.
And it's first for a reason, I assume, right?
Right.
So, first off, could you tell me a story of something maybe earlier in your career or whenever of a moment where you had to do something really hard that was career or life changing that you really didn't want to do, but you did it anyway?
Yeah, the one that comes up for me, and thank you for that. Like, yes, you know, in the podcast, we talk a lot about that, doing hard things. You know, it's like, because we believe that our best self is found on the other side of doing hard things. I feel like, before I answer your question, I just want to say this. I feel like in our society, we've lost sight of that. People run away from pain instead of running towards it. People run away from hardship instead of running towards it. And there's actually, your best self is found on the other side of that pain, on the other side of that hurt, and on the other side of that challenge. And so I think we, especially men, we've gotten pretty soft, you know? And so like I'm on a mission to essentially show people and be like, no, you want to run towards hardships. You want to run towards hard things, whether that's physically hard, emotionally hard, financially hard, because on the other side of that is your best self, right? On the other side of that is this version of you that's dying to meet you. So, you know, that's what the podcast is about. And to answer your question, the story that comes up for me, and this is a story I always share because this was my first moment in my whole life of when I truly did something hard. It was when I joined the Marine Corps at 19 years old. So prior to that, for like the last 5 years of my life, like at age 14, I got involved with like, you know, the wrong crowd, you know, like started smoking cigarettes. Like I was literally smoking a pack a day by the age of 15.
Jeez.
You know, I had friends that were 18 that could buy it and stuff, and started drinking. And like, I kid you not, all through high school, I was like pretty much blackout drunk every weekend. And so from, you know, 14 to 19, I was just like with the wrong crowd. I went to college. I tried college. I flunked out because I was literally high or drunk like 6 days of the 7 days of the week. And so I flunked out. Like I didn't do any of my homework. I barely showed up to class. I flunked out. And I hit this rock bottom in that after like I got the notice that I couldn't return to school because I went to a private school. They told me like, hey, you can't come back. And so I hit this rock bottom in my life where I'm like, what am I doing in my life? I'm like, because right now I had the choice of either going back and move in with my parents because I was in a dorm, either going back and moving with my parents, get some some crap job, and then that's my life, and maybe do community college, or I can do something radical. And I was like, well, what's radical? I'm like, well, the military. Like, that sounds radical. So I was like, all right, what's the hardest branch? And so I did research, and the Marine Corps has always been really good at putting ads out there that make them seem like they're the bad ads. And they are, Some people may argue me with this, but they are. And so I was like, I'm going to do that because I recognized that I needed a change in my life. I recognized that the path I was on was not a good path. The path of all I did was party, drink, smoke weed was not the path I wanted to go down. So I joined the Marine Corps at 19. And it was the hardest 3 months. Like, going through boot camp was so hard because I wasn't like, I had a present father, like my dad provided for me. My dad loved me. But the one thing I feel like I lacked, and nothing on his part, it was just that he worked so much to provide for us, was I never was taught how to be a man, right? I never had a masculine role model in my life, whether it was a father or even somebody else. And for the first time in my life, I had that in the Marine Corps, right? My drill instructors were like teaching me like hardships and like to keep going even when it hurts, right? Like they haze the heck out of you. And so the part though that was most crucial was when we did the Crucible. So the Crucible is a 52-hour exercise. It's at the very end. It's the final test before you're a Marine, right? Up until this, they just call you a recruit, right? You're not even a Marine yet. And that's one of the things that's different about the Marine than the Army, the Navy, is that you're not called a Marine until you actually pass boot camp, where like in other branches, they call you like a sailor or Army, like when you go to boot camp. Anyway, so we're at the Crucible, and it's 52 hours of very little sleep, very little food, very little like water, right? Like I think we got 4 hours of sleep total in those 52. Jeez. Yeah, in those 52 hours, right? Like you slept 2 hours each day. And so like at the very end though, and the whole time you're physically moving, you're like doing like firing exercises, like you're running through mud, like so at the very end, it's like now like the final 6 hours, they wake you up at 2 a.m. They have you pack all your gear, and they put you put it on you, which is 100 pounds, right? You put this 100-pound backpack on you. And I still remember I had my boots on. The moment I put the pack on, I felt my blisters just squish. So I had all these blisters on my feet. And then we had to do a 10-mile hike. And this is it. This is the final thing, and we're done. And at 2 a.m, 10-mile hike. And I was like, okay. And then we started walking. It was so painful to move. And I remember after like just 1 mile, like guys are just dropping. They're just boom, dropping, boom, dropping. And I was like, I started getting anxious. And I was like, I told myself, okay, just focus on one step. Because when I started thinking about like, oh, we still got 9 miles, 8 miles, 7 miles, it was like so daunting. And I remember I told myself, just focus on one step, just one step, because I can do that. One step doesn't seem like a lot. So I tricked myself in being like essentially present and being like, just focus on one step at a time and just believe that eventually you'll get there. And finally, 5 miles, 3 miles left, 2 miles left, 1 mile left. Finally, I can see the finish line, like maybe half a mile away, and I'm excited. Finally, we get there, and they line you up, and they tell you to put stick your left hand out, and the drill instructor steps in front of you. And now, mind you, for the last 3 months, this drill instructor has been nothing but a terror to you. They've called you all sorts of bad names. They have yelled at you. They've hazed you. You've never seen them smile. They've never showed you an ounce of kindness. And for the first time in 3 months, my drill instructor steps in front of me. He smiles at me. And he says, and he puts what's called the EGA, Eagle Globe and Anchor, on my hand. And he says, congratulations, you are now a United States Marine. And he closes my hand. And I still have that EGA to this date. And I remember bawling, like just crying. I was just crying. And it was tears of joy because that was the first time in my life that I had done something worthy of myself. That was the first time in my life where I'm like, I did something hard. Up until then, my life had been pretty easy. I've been comfortable. I chose the easy path. I chose the path of least resistance. And at 19, that was the first time in my life where I can say I did something hard. Because I didn't really do sports in school. I wasn't a straight A student. Like my whole life, I had kind of taken the easy route. And because I never had that masculine leadership, I never had somebody like a drill instructor to push me, even if I hated them, And so that's like I still hold on to that memory because that, to answer your question, that's what changed the course of my life. Joining the Marine Corps was exactly what I needed, because the Marine Corps taught me discipline, taught me structure. It taught me respect of my superiors. It taught me to have a purpose in life. It taught me to have a love for my country. You know, it gave me so many like principles that to this day, that, I mean, this was 13 years ago, to this day, I still hold true. And so like, that's where honestly, like a lot of what you see today, a lot of who you see I am today, a lot of like the podcasts or the solar stuff or whatever, like it was birthed in that moment. It was birthed from that feeling of I want to have that feeling again and again. And I want to have that feeling of accomplishment, knowing that I can only get there by going through hardships, by going through pain, by going through suffering, because that is where your best self is always found.
100%, man.
No, long-winded story.
No, I mean, that was the question that I asked. And yeah, one thing that you said that stuck out to me was that last moment. You said it was 10 miles and you were like, oh, you see people falling, dropping like flies, and you're like, oh man, can I make this? But then you thought one step at a time. And I had a meeting with Stetson like almost a year ago at this point, one of our good friends, and he's awesome. And I've always talked about this Goat Mountain thing because of Kobe Bryant, and this podcast is for people that want to get to the top of the mountain, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing about people like us is we have these high aspirations, so we look so high that we see how far away it is, and we get a little discouraged, right? Because we have such forward vision that it's like, oof, that's pretty far away. Can I do that? And I went to Stetson and I was like, man, like that mountain looks steep. And he said, all you can do is just take it one step at a time. That's and right. Then by the time you know it, you'll look back and see how far you've come. And so, yeah, that one step at a time is something that I think about all the time. Yeah. I think it's really good advice.
Yeah.
Awesome story. So we are in California. We do solar.
That's right.
Talk about, there's been a lot of changes, right? NEM 3. You're kind of known as the NEM 3 guy. You talk about doing hard things, so I know that's why you attacked it. But you could have pivoted. You could have maybe switched markets. You could have done a lot of things. But what made you want to stay in California and take this dragon head on?
Yeah, no, great question. So, I mean, I think first it involved me studying it, right? You can't tackle something you don't understand. Mm-hmm. And so I took it upon myself that the moment this NEM 3 was supposed to happen, I started studying it. A lot of people don't know this, but January of 2020, what are we on, 23? Mm-hmm. January of 2022, so almost 2 years ago, NEM 3 was supposed to pass then. Yep. And so that's when it really caught wind. And so like this is like 11 months before it officially happened. But that's when I started to study like what is NEM 3 just to be prepared. And of course it didn't happen, right? Like it was supposed to happen then, but they delayed it for a whole nother year until December of 2022. So when it actually happened, I was prepared because I had taken the time to study it. So, first and foremost, I would say whenever you tackle anything, you want to study it, right? Because again, you can't tackle something you don't study, right? You don't go to, like, military leaders don't go to war without studying their enemy, right? Like you just have to do that. Like Kobe Bryant doesn't play against his players without studying how they play, right? So I think it's first and foremost, like, understand the problem that you're tackling, because you can't conquer anything that you don't understand. And so after I studied it, like, yeah, I recognized that it was a challenge, but I also recognized that it wasn't like an impossible challenge. And going back to my first value, do hard things, like I also recognize an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to gain market share, because the truth is when hardships happen, the vast majority of people quit. The vast majority of people they go somewhere else, right? So I recognize an opportunity because I recognize that in California, selling solar has been very easy for a long time. It doesn't take rocket science to sell it during the NEM 2, NEM 1 world. And so I recognize, like, okay, this is just going to make the sell just a little bit more complicated, a little bit more professional. It's going to require us to learn new stuff. And most people aren't willing to do that. Mm-hmm. So I recognize an opportunity of, like, okay, I already know that a lot of people are going to quit. So this could be an opportunity for me to gain market share. And so I just had to have that vision that on the other side of this challenge was a version of Valor, a version of Legacy that doesn't exist yet. And, I went into it with that faith. And of course, in March, I didn't necessarily know like what exactly was going to happen, but I just believed that if we tackled it, if we were the loudest in the industry to say like, hey, we know this is hard, but we're going to get through it, while most people are saying this is hard, let's leave, this is hard, let's quit, or some people were flat out like making it seem like it wasn't a big deal. There were people who were like, oh no, it's all right. And I'm like, no, dude, you're lying to your people, because your people know it's a big deal. And actually by you saying it's not a big deal, you probably caused them to be more anxious, because what you're saying is I don't have a plan. And so like I took the approach of like, no, yes, this is hard. Like, you're right. This is very hard. You're right. This has the potential to cripple a sales organization and install or whatever. However, we believe in hard things. We believe in tackling hard things. And so we tackled NEM3, and I remember May and April were like the lowest months we've had in production. Right? Yeah. We did like 600 accounts in March and then 150 in May. Yeah. And it was like, oof, like, was it May? Yeah. April. We did 150 in April. We went from 600 to 150. That's like we did 25% of the volume in April than we did in March, and it was crazy. But what's cool is because now we're actually living in that other side of doing hard things.
Yep.
Because I don't know if you know this, but last month we sold more accounts than we did in March.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Yes.
Right? When March happened, like I thought that was the biggest. You remember March, right? It was like, dude, like sales every day, every 20 minutes, someone's getting a sale. It's like sell, Yeah. And because it was like the end of NEM2. And so there was a huge urgency. And I remember when March ended, I thought to myself, I'm like, wow, we probably want to have a month like that for like a while. And I thought that to myself. And it's like surreal to see that we actually beat March's volume. So in March, we did like 610 accounts, I believe. And then last August, so last month, we did 653. So we didn't beat it by like a lot, but we beat it by like an extra 50 sales. But the fact that we even like did the same amount, if not more, is like in NEM3 is crazy, So it's just like crazy because now we've unlocked a whole new version of ourselves, right? We had many people hit PRs, we had many teams hit PRs, many squads hit PRs, and now we know what we're capable of, right? And the best part is like now we're like, oh wow, like what used to seem hard now is like normal. And that's what happens when you tackle hard things, is what seems hard becomes normal. Like the gym. Once upon a time, benching 135 was like really heavy for me. Now that's like a warm-up. Now it's like, oh yeah, that's just like a warm-up. It's not like super heavy.
It's still heavy for me.
Yeah. Well, but one day it's going to be a warm-up, right? If you keep at it, if you keep tackling the hardship. So, yeah, so I just like why like essentially like why do it? Just because I understood that there was an opportunity to dominate. There was an opportunity to grow. When things get tough, that's actually when the real professionals rise. There's like a saying, I might butcher it. I'm going to try. It says like, good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times create good men, and good men create great times. Something like that, Yeah. And so in other words, it's like it's the best people are actually forged during the hard times. The best people are forged during the hard times, and I knew that, and I believed it, and now we're living in that we're literally just had our best month ever last month.
It was ever?
Actually, yeah, I think we even beat Masters volume. Minus Masters volume, because that's just always every year. That's always a year. That's just like
so you beat
minus
last
that.
August.
I think we even beat last November's volume.
Really?
I think I haven't checked that one, but for sure, not including Masters. Yes, that's been our best month. Like we did 652 last month for Valor. That's been our best month ever.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
In an NEM3 world.
In an NEM3 world.
Yes.
Right.
So I mean, you have proof in the pudding that you can make it work in NEM3. But I do talk to some people. There are reps out there that are still struggling, that were maybe better during NEM2 and that are still struggling during this NEM3 world. For one, why do you think some of those reps are struggling, and what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I think the ones that are struggling are the ones that are stuck in an analytical frame. I think they're making it too complex. And so they're just trying to like the ones that I see struggling are the ones that are just like super stuck in the analytical frame. Because one thing for sure is the doors haven't changed, right? Most people, when you talk to them, like there's not like they are like have this deep understanding of NEM 2 and NEM 3, right? Like the customers. So on the doors, nothing's changed. They're still like, oh, they just hear solar. They're like either like, yeah, I'm interested, or no, I'm not interested. So the doors haven't changed. What has changed is just how you close them, right? What has changed is just that you now have to attach some type of battery, whether it's a grid tie battery or backup battery, and then understanding that the savings aren't necessarily as good as they were before. And I feel like the ones that are struggling are the ones that like try to explain to the customer everything in like exact detail. Like meaning like, okay, in the month of June, you're gonna have an $80 electric bill, but then in the month of July, you're gonna have a $120, and like it doesn't have to do that. You don't have to do that because no different than when I walk in a room, I don't ask this person, hey, can you tell me how this light switch when I turn it on? Can you tell me exactly where the wires are at and like how it all functions? I don't need to know that. I just have to trust that when I turn that switch on, a light comes on. But I don't need to understand like the intricacies of how the light bulb works or where the wirings are at in this room. And I feel like people have to understand that's the same thing with solar. It's like the homeowner doesn't need to understand the intricacies of like every little detail. As long as number one, you have conviction and faith that you're saving the money, right? Which again, I go back to education, educate yourself. You number one have to have conviction. Because I think on the other side of the analytical frame is that people don't have conviction in what they're selling. And the golden rule in sales is the first person you got to close is yourself, right? If you don't believe your product, then people are going to pick that up. So you have to believe in NEM 3. You have to believe that, hey, going solar even in an NEM 3 world is still better than staying with the utilities, right? You have to believe that with a real conviction. Because then people pick up that conviction. And then when you sit with them, you don't have to get super analytical, right? Like the simplest way to explain it is like, hey, when you go solar, I'm going to lower your bill, right? You're still going to have a utility bill. It's going to fluctuate month over month, right? Some months it's probably going to be a little higher, maybe like $40, $50, $80 a month, depending on what you do. Some months will be lower. But as long as you can show them that overall you're going to save them money, and they can feel that conviction in you, then they're going to trust you, right? Again, like, because sales is all about trust, okay? You don't have to, when a surgeon meets with you, right? If you have to get surgery, a surgeon doesn't tell you with precise detail how he's going to cut you up. A surgeon doesn't say, all right, Xavier, I'm going to cut you right here, and then I'm going to insert this scalpel, okay? And then I'm going to put this chemical in you, and then I'm going to wait 3 minutes, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to take this thread. I'm going to do, like, surgeons don't do that. Right? When you walk into a surgery, you put your trust and faith in the surgeon that they know what they're doing, and you just trust that the outcome will be whatever, right, the surgery is. And I think we got to have that same approach when we go in the home. Is that number one, you got to have the conviction, and then you got to display that conviction to homeowners that, hey, you don't have to understand everything. Just understand the basics, right? And just know that in the end, like, it's going to help you out. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, I just wrote down be a surgeon.
Yeah.
And I do use that I took it from Ashton, is I say I'm kind of a solar doctor. Mm-hmm. You tell me your symptoms and I'll tell you what you need. But yeah, I am that way. I do know there are people that are way more analytical than me and technical that like break it down to the nitty gritty. But yeah, I mean, I tell people I'm on the need to know.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
What do they need to know?
Stuff. Yeah, need to know.
Yeah. So you've built a pretty large team. How many reps?
We're pushing close to 300 now.
300?
Yeah.
When you took over as leader, how many reps did you have?
What do you mean took over as leader?
When you like started Valor, when you branded Valor.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Well, we were 2 offices then, so I guess, I mean, when I first entered leadership before Valor, I guess, we were at maybe 40 reps, 30, 40 reps.
Building strong.
But that was 5-ish years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just say top 3. What are the top 3 qualities that you look for when you're hiring a new recruit?
Yeah, I would say number 1, coachability. Doesn't matter how talented someone is. If they can't be coachable, it's just very hard to grow with that person. So coachability. I actually prefer people that have never done sales before because they're actually more coachable than people who have done sales, just because there are they think they know it all. So I would say coachability first and foremost. Number two, like it has some type of background where they can this is not like a needed thing, but pretty close to that. Have some type of background where they have displayed work ethics in the past, like military background or some type of athletic background. If they have done sales, that they've actually been successful in that, right? Because some guys say they do sales, but then you ask them like, "What's been your best year?" They're like, "Oh, my best year is like 60,000." I'm like, "Okay, then you didn't like necessarily excel in that. Not that 60,000 is bad, but I think if you're in any sales, you should always strive for minimum 100K, if not 200, right? At bare minimum." And so I would say, like, of course, having a strong work ethics. Like I've seen guys that are prime military are good, prior like athletic background. Like Stetson was like he was deep in basketball for a long time. Parents do really well too, because that is a strong work ethics. Because when you have a parent, when you are a parent, you recognize that if you don't succeed, other people don't get fed. Right. So I've seen like usually parents. So like that kind of background, like that's what I like to look for. Sure. I've seen people that kind of come into it and they've never really had a real job. They've never done anything really hard in their lives. Can they succeed? Yes. It's just that the odds of them succeeding are a lot lower than someone who like already has some kind of background in that. So I would say that. And then let me see. Third thing is, I used to actually have all three of these. Talked about coachability, work the hours, or like essentially strong work ethics. I would say like third thing I look for is someone that has like a strong why. I talked about parents. Like parents automatically have a strong why.
Yes.
But I've seen like when I ask people like, cool, hey, why do you want to get in this? The guys that usually do it for the money are the guys that usually don't last. I'll ask people like, okay, hey, why do you want to do this job? Like, oh, well, I just want to make money. Like usually those guys don't last. But the guys that like I remember when I interviewed Jordan, right, Jordan Matesius, which ended up being like one of the best dudes who ever brought on. I remember I asked him later on, I'm like, hey, why did you decide to do this? And he's like, when you were talking to me about the character development, about the person that you've became because of knocking doors, he's like, I recognize that that's what I needed in my life. I needed to be molded. I needed to have more character. And he's like, that's why I decided to do it. And that's why Jordan stayed planted, because he wasn't doing it for the money. He did it for the character development. His why was, I want to become a better person. And I see how door-to-door sales can help me be that. So someone that has a really deep-rooted why, right? Not something superficial, because money won't motivate you so far. Yeah. But things like character development, things like your kids, things like, I want to do it because I want to retire my mom, my dad, I want to pay off my debts, whatever. Like something that deep can push you through the hardships.
For sure. Yeah. I remember when I first came over to my first correlation for Legacy, I had been doing solar for like 6 or 8 months before for a smaller company. And when I came over, Jake was the one who recruited me. He introduced me to you, and you were like, what are your goals? And I told you what my goals were by the end of the year. And you were like, you can do that in 3 months. And I was like, oh, okay. And you just like shifted my whole mindset on what I can achieve and how fast I could do it. Right. And that was awesome. The work ethic thing I think is huge, because as we know, we pull people from all sorts of backings. We say anyone could do this, anyone can do sales. If I could do it, you could do it. We've had bartenders, barbers, valets that are making millions of dollars. But the truth is not everybody can do this. We're all a little twisted. We all have a couple of distinct qualities that keep us in a job like this, because it is not easy. It's a hard job. Yeah. And it takes a special type of person.
I agree, and I think I believe that for a long time. Like anyone can do it, but yes, now 8 years in, I've definitely came to the conclusion that you're right. Not just anybody can do it. Like if just like we have an ideal kind of customer. Mm-hmm. Right, with solar, like I've also learned to develop an ideal sales rep for me. Like an ideal sales rep, like the person I feel like is the most cut out for it, is like a charismatic, positive, optimistic person, right? Someone that like when you're around them, you just sense this high energy, right? Like so that person, preferably a parent, and married, because again, like being married and a father myself, like when I was single, if I failed, it only impacted me. Mm-hmm. Like, cool. Hey, worst case scenario, I'll go crash on my buddy's couch, right? Like that's where, if you're single, like, cool, like that's fine, like whatever, I'll just go crash on my buddy's couch. Well, when you're married and you have kids, it's like, no, you can't do that. Like, I can't just be like, hey, can I crash your couch with my wife, with my 2 kids? You know, so I've realized that those types of people tend to do well. So like, I try to look for those people. And I'm not saying that, you know, that's the only people that can do it, but I've just seen that the vast majority of people who not just excel in sales, but also like excel in as a leader as well, are the people who have that type of why and that type of backing, because they have a deep reason as to why they're doing it. And so I don't know what kind of made me say that.
No worries. I wanted to talk about, I did a little digging on your Instagram and went back in the day. Maybe this is when Ryan was shooting you.
Dude.
Yeah.
Skeletons are coming out.
Yeah,
Huh?
no, I mean, this was, you had made a video talking to professionals and you said, pressure is a privilege.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Pressure is a privilege. And you said...
Tim Grover said that.
Okay, I love Tim Grover.
Yeah.
Kobe Bryant's mentor.
Yeah.
You elaborated by saying you don't want to be a guy, you want to be the guy.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know actually that you don't know this story, but when Christian, my mentor, was planning to branch off in office and everything was kind of coming into fruition, and it was going to happen, and we were talking about who was going to go and who the leaders were going to be and the vision for the office. And there was one day that you called him and you were talking about it, and I was in the car with him. And so I was just sitting there listening like a little mouse. And I was still a setter at that point, and I was doing very well. I think I was probably the best setter in Valor at that point.
Yeah.
To pat my own back, but I was still a setter, and I did have a little bit of a limited belief on becoming a top closer. Right? I didn't know if I really had that in me to be the guy, and I remember you were talking about The Office and who was going to be in it, and you said. And you said, you have Isaac, and I'm pretty sure Isaac's going to be a shark for you guys. And you said that, and it triggered something in my brain to be like, there's pressure, man. Like, John's counting on me. Like, John's counting on me to be a shark. Like, I have to go out there and, like, be the guy, not a guy. And so that pressure is a privilege translated into me becoming one of the top guys in the office and in Valor for multiple months. But what is... Because I just asked you, what are your 3 qualities for a recruit, and there are levels of you know, if you have those qualities and you have a lot of drive, like, you can become really good at this job and you can make 100, 200, maybe even more money. But what is maybe the number one quality of people that are the guy, the people that go on to make $500,000, million, building teams, stuff like that?
Yeah, no, that's great. And yeah, to, you know, kind of tag on that quote, like, you want to be the guy, right? Because everyone wants the a guy. You know, the guy is like, who do you call on when, like, Kobe Bryant, right? Kobe Bryant was always the guy. It's like, okay, 100, we got 3 seconds left. Who can handle the pressure of the last shot? And it was always Kobe Bryant.
Yes.
And that's why he's the great, because he was the guy. He was the only one that can handle that type of pressure. And yes, pressure is a privilege, which ties in with our first value of do hard things, right? Because pressure is what allows you to grow. You know, diamonds are formed under pressure. And that's why they're very valuable, because you have to find them deep in the earth, because they have to be under, I don't know how many, but maybe millions and millions of pounds of pressure. And that's how they're forged, right? Through pressure. You can't form diamonds without pressures. So it is very important that as a top sales rep, as a top leader, if you really want to build an organization, because doing sales is a whole different, like, requires a different capacity than leading a team. And so I would say, like, one of the first quality is someone that has a high, what I called AQ quotient. So everyone knows about an IQ, right? Intelligence quotient, EQ, emotional quotient. I have this thing called an AQ, which stands for adversity quotient. So essentially, if we could measure how much adversity you can handle, like, what would that number be? Just like how you can measure intelligence, just like how you can measure emotional intelligence. Like, if you could measure adversity quotient, what would that be? You know? And so something I look at, especially, like, the closer you get to me in terms of title, I look for people who, like, have gone through hard stuff with me. because there's power in that. You know, like for example, Jake Ransom's one of my one of my right hand man, but he is because him and I have gone through hard stuff together. I've seen him at his when the pressure's on, because I do believe that people's true character comes out under pressure. I do believe that's when you see their character really come out, right? That's when you'll see, like, let's say a guy is knocking doors for the first time, a homeowner cusses them out, the pressure's on, they feel it, and then they cuss them back. Cool, I just saw your true character. Yeah. That's really who you are, right? Where someone that can handle a lot of pressure, and someone that, cool, if I get cussed at, like, you'll never see me cussing the homeowner back, like, well, you this and that. I'm like, cool. If someone gets ghetto with me, like, I'm just like, hey, cool, have a good day, because I don't care. Yeah. Right. Because I've handled enough pressure in my life to be like, this doesn't do anything to me. Right. I can handle that pressure. Right. Now, of course, my breaking point is different. I still have one, because everyone does. Yeah. So I look for people that, cool, have we been through hardships together? Right. Because I want to have certainty that if we go through another hardship, like an M3 situation, that you won't bounce, you won't leave, you won't quit, or you won't go where the grass is greener. And I'm very grateful that during this NEM3 thing, I didn't lose a single leader, right? And I think then that was done with intention, because all of my leaders, we've been through hardships together already. You don't just get to become a leader without going through hardships with me. Right. And especially the closer you get to me, like, I want to know that I can trust you, because I want my most innerest of circles to be people that, hey, we've been through hard stuff together. You know, and I'm not saying that's like a black and white statement. Like, yes, there's exceptions to that rule. But I would say that's the first thing I look for is, like, cool, do you have an adversity quotient? You know, or a high AQ quotient, and, like, have we been through hardships together? Because then that gives me certainty that when we do go through hard stuff, because we will, if we're in sales, if we're in business, if we're entrepreneurs, if we want to live a big life, we have to understand that the higher you go, the problems don't go away. They just become bigger, right? People think like, oh, like, you know, modern America idolizes Hollywood and celebrities, and they think they have it so easy. No, I'm sure if you could step into their lives are probably very hard. Yeah. Which is why you see a lot of rich people take their lives. You see a lot of rich people abuse alcohol and drugs because they're trying to escape actually the world they're in. And we think like, oh, they have it so good because they make $100 million a year. But most of them are probably like depressed because they can't handle that pressure. And so, you know, it's, yeah, so I would say like that's the first one. You know, second one, go back to even like just the 3 characteristics. It's like, just have a strong why. Mm-hmm. You know, like I want to surround myself around people who have a strong why, something of substance, you know, like, I know I keep going back to like parents a lot, but I like to be around also people that are parents and are married. Like that's just my preference, because I recognize that these people automatically have a strong why. I'm huge on marriages. I'm huge on parenting, because I also do think that that's what matters. What we do in solar right now, in 20 years, 30 years, it might be forgotten. I don't know. I hope not, but it might. But you know what won't be forgotten is how I treated my wife, the impact I made on my kids. And so I have to recognize that at the end of the day, that's the main thing. So I want to be around people who have that same belief, because if I can operate from that belief, then I will work harder in solar, right? Because hey, cool, I'm doing it so my kids can be proud of me. I'm doing it so that, you know, my wife and I can have the lifestyle that maybe we didn't have when we were kids. So I would say those are some of the things I look for kind of as we grow and scale with people.
To be the guy.
To be the guy.
You want to be the guy, not a guy.
To be the guy. Yeah.
And you've built this this powerhouse of an office, 4 offices, 5 offices, 6 offices. Oh,
you start shortchange me.
I'm sorry, 6 offices, and growing fast. You've done this from what I've witnessed, primarily off building your leaders, as you just mentioned. Your leaders, you're building your leaders. What is some advice on, so as a mentor myself, I know it's super important on who I bring in as my core. Just as you did, you built your core around people you trust a lot and whatnot. But what is some advice that you give your leaders? What is something that I could do as a mentor, as a growing leader myself, to to help my younger generation become leaders themselves, because that's really what greatness is about. Really, it's not about being great yourself and go putting up your own numbers and doing that.
Right.
It's about teaching other people to teach other people to teach other people.
Yeah, adopt this philosophy of people are inherently good. I believe that my whole life, that people are inherently good. I think there's goodness in everybody. I just think that maybe that goodness got maybe masked with trauma, with hurt, with pain, with rejection. I think that even the people that are bad and in quote unquote evil, I still believe there's good in them. It's just that for whatever reason, maybe they were hurt as the kids or whatever. The reason I know that is because every little kid you see is good. Every little kid, you don't see kids grow. You don't see a 3-year-old like freaking, beating somebody up. Now, if they do, it's because they're probably seeing it through other people. But when you look at the pureness of kids, they're good. It's just that somewhere along the way, we lose that. And so I would say, first of all, it's understanding that people are inherently good and that it is our role as leaders to bring out that goodness in them. And so like that's for me what valor represents, right? Valor represents taking broken, discontent people and helping them become men and women of valor, right? Valor means having courage in the face of adversity. And that's something that, yeah, sure, some people maybe are naturally born with that, but most aren't. Most of them have to learn that. So, being a mentor, it really is believing that the best people that will actually serve you are the most broken people. Because if you can be there for someone when they have nothing to give you, they will be there when they now have everything to give you. And I think it's very easy for us to be like, oh, I want someone that's like already dialed in and already like super successful and already comes in and work. And like, yeah, you'll get those people every once in a while and they're awesome when you get them. You're like, oh, thank you, Jesus. Like, this is an awesome. However, most people aren't like that. One cool thing I love about all of our leaders right now is like I can say that I was there when they were brand new. And none of them were the caliber of man or woman that you see today. Jake Ransom has done a whole 180 from when I first met him. From when I first met him, he was a mess. He was not. There was a period of time where we called him Site Survey Ransom because he was like the softest closer ever. Now, dude, he has like solid conversions. I remember the first time he ran correlation, he was the worst speaker. I wish I would have recorded it. He was like, yeah, and his thoughts were all over the place. He was just random. Like now he gets in front of a room, dude, owns the room. Like great, Like Stetson, also like it's funny. I just showed a photo of Stetson the other day when he graduated his GPI. But if you ever met Stetson, he was not the Stetson you see today. Same with Malik, right? Malik almost actually got fired. Now he's a strong leader. And so like all these guys, the Jacks, I remember Zaira when she first started. All these guys, they were not who they are today. So I think as a mentor, you have to believe in people. You have to believe that there is good in them. And that it is your job to get it out. And it's like you're mining for it. And if you're digging for gold, it's messy, right? If you're actually digging for gold, it's messy. And I always tell people, leadership is messy. Leadership is messy. If it's actually not messy, then you're not really a leader. If it's all smooth, then actually you're not really a leader. Leadership is meant to be messy because people are messy. There's nobody in this world that walks around and has it all together. We all have traumas. We all have pain. We all have hurts. We all have we all have limiting beliefs. We all have insecurities. We all have fears. We all have doubts. All of us do. And so I would say like as a mentor is like believe in people, like really see the good in them. And your job is to figure out how to get it out of them. And everybody's different. Like, and there's not necessarily like a cookie cutter, like formula for that, but you just have to believe in people and you have to believe in them sometimes more than they believe in themselves. Just like how that day you told me like your goals and I was like, no, you can do it in 3 months. You didn't believe you could do it in 3 months, but I know you could. I knew you could because other people have already done it, and I believe that if one person can do it, then anyone can do it. Just like how that guy that when he broke the 4-minute mile, right? The moment he did it, everyone's like, oh, well, if he can do it, then I can do it, right? And all it takes is one person, right? And the cool thing with what we have now is that a lot of people have already gone ahead to accomplish some big things, but so that means that other people can come and do it. So I'm like, oh, dude, I've seen people do your goals in 3 months. So if they can do it, why can't you? Yeah. Like, why can't you? Right? And so, I believed in you more than you probably believed in yourself at that moment. And so that's what a leader does. It's like, helps them see the potential, helps them see a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, and understands that it's meant to be messy. I think sometimes people, the moment it gets messy, like I see some guys like they'll have like 5 setters and they all quit, and then I ask them like, oh well, what happened? Oh well, this guy just didn't work hard. Well, this guy was always giving me excuses. Well, this guy, and I'm like, you do realize that you are the common denominator.
Yeah.
So is it really them or is it you? And then, but no one wants to take ownership. Because everyone expects to get setters that like are just hardworking and they are always on the doors without being told. But I'm like, no. Your guys need structure. You got to provide structure. You need to tell them when to go knock. You need to tell them, go in this hood. You need to check up on them. You need to do life with them. You need to, like, leadership is meant to be messy. Mm-hmm. It's meant to be exhausting. If you're not going to bed exhausted every single night, then you're not doing it right. But guys are quick to be like, oh, they just expect them to figure it out on their own. Like, no, that's your role because you're their mentor, And I think as a mentor, you got to provide structure.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome advice. Who are some of your mentors?
So one of my first mentors, or not first, but one of my early mentors, this guy named Colin. Well, he's a Pastor Colin Higginbottom. I remember I would meet with him so many times when I was like kind of an up and comer. And, he would pour a lot into me. I would ask him a lot of questions about life, about work, I was single at the time. Then I started dating Josie, but he really coached me a lot through that. So I would say, he was one of my first ones. Well, a more current one today is actually Pastor John Heinrichs. He's one of the central region pastors at Awaken. And him and I connect a lot. Like, I'll send him voice memos a lot of times. When we got that new team, the Avalon team or Corona team, mm-hmm. and we did the merger, I reached out to him. I was like, hey, like, what do you have for me on like how to best integrate an already team that's dialed in? They have their own culture, their own set of processes. And so he's someone that, has poured into me. I believe in also having mentors that you don't physically know. So for me, like Tony Robbins has always been one, of course. Not so much today, but definitely early on. Zig Ziglar, like Jim Rohn. Those are some of my early mentors. As far as today, like I'm a big fan of Andy Elliott. I love how he carries himself. It's very bold. It's very like in your face, but like I feel like that's what men need. Like men need that stuff. I feel like we have gone weak as a generation, and so he's someone I look up to. And something. The biggest thing I think I've taken from him is I love how he integrates his wife into everything he does. And I think a lot of men, they separate work from marriage. They're like, cool, I'm off to work. This is my thing. And then 8-10 hours later, they come back and like, okay, cool, now this is our thing. And I love how he integrates the two. It's like they do it together. And ever since seeing that, I'm finding more and more ways to get Josie more incorporated with work. So that way it's not like that's what John does. Like, no, I want her to be like, no, you represent this too. And that's really done well in our marriage. So those are some of my mentors.
Nice. Yeah. And because of you, I went to one of his events, and I'm going to another one in October. I don't know if you are going, but I will be going. And I mean, tons of nuggets. Guy's a savage, but my favorite part was when his wife talked, and it was really cool to see how, like you said, integrated they are. It is their business. It's not his business. It might be his name, but she's just as, if not more important. Yep. You know what I mean? And that's super cool to see. It's changed my whole mindset on relationships, because I was kind of the opposite, where what you just said, I would have my career and then my personal life, and I would keep them very separate because I didn't want them to be mixed. But I think the key to life is finding two that do mix, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that he helped me realize too. So how long you been doing door to door?
8 years. 8 years door to door, sales about 11.
Okay. So all the trials and tribulations you've gone through, if you could send a voice message back to John 11 years ago for anybody who's just starting out in their door-to-door career, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, I would say fail faster. I think too often we believe this lie that failure is a bad thing. And it's no surprise, right? We go through 12 years of public school. We're taught getting an F is bad. We're taught failing is bad. The word failure always has a negative connotation to it. And actually, failure can sometimes be better than success, because sometimes success actually can take you out more than failure can. Because every time you fail at something, there's actually a lesson there if you're willing to look at it. But most of us don't think of failure like that. When we think of like we failed, the initial reaction is like, oh, I suck, I'm bad, I'll never be good at this. And actually, no. All failure is like, it shows you your gap. Failure just be, okay, you want to go here, but you're actually here. And this is what you got to work on. There's a lesson there. And if we're willing to see that lesson, that's how we grow. And so what I would just tell myself is, John, fail faster. Like, fail faster. I was so scared to fail my first few years because, again, I viewed it as a bad thing. I viewed it as like, oh, it's embarrassing. Oh, I don't want, like, I didn't tell anyone I did door-to-door for like the first year and a half I was in solar because I was embarrassed of like, well, what if I don't make it? Well, what if I, if I get rejected? What if I go to this appointment and they don't close? And I was scared. I was scared of failing, but now I embrace it. Now I'm like, if I'm actually not failing, then I'm not doing something right, because in April we were failing, right? Going from 600 to 150. Cool. Awesome. What do I got to do then to grow? So I had to innovate. I had to grow. And so I would just tell myself that, just fail faster and understand that there is a lesson in failing. Because in life, I don't think you win or lose. I think you either win or you learn a lesson. That's how I view life. It's either you win or you learn a lesson. And learning a lesson sometimes, if not almost all the time, is actually more valuable than winning. Because you never want to be the biggest fish in the room. Because if you're winning all the time, then that means you're the biggest fish in the room. And you can actually put a ceiling on your life. And so I always want to be like, cool, like, how can I grow? How can I grow? And you do that by just failing. And it's obviously open to interpretation how you want to view failure, right? Somebody can get 100 sales in a month and be like, I'm winning, but to some 100 sales in a month is failing, right? So it's all subjective. At the end of the day, it's just cool. What vision do you have for your life? And then go become that.
Yeah. That's a good quote. The lessons are more valuable than the wins. It's a great perspective to look at.
Well, Colin, so, it was one of the mentors I mentioned, he taught me years ago, he was like, John, for every 50 people that can handle adversity, only one can handle prosperity. And he says, victory actually takes out more people than failure usually does. Because people, when they win, they get confident, right? And we see this all the time in door-to-door. People get their first big check. What do?
Disappear for a few weeks.
Oh, they get comfortable. Oh, and then they try to create the momentum again, and then now it's harder. And then they quit altogether. And it was actually what took them out was that win. That win. Oh my gosh, I just got my first $20,000 check. Oh, I can breathe. Okay, I can just chill this weekend. I can chill this week. And then they can't do it again. But had they instead been like, awesome, I made $20K, cool, it's a win. Let me celebrate for maybe a day max, and then put themselves back in that broke mindset, they would have been able to carry that success. But success took them out. And so I believed this lie for a long time that like, oh, when I'm successful, then I'll be happy. When I have 100K, then when I make 100K, then I'll be happy. Well, when I have 500K, then I'll be happy. When I make $1 million, I'll be happy. When I have this car, I'll be happy. When I get married, I'll be happy. And then I realized, like, wait a minute, no, life's actually all about, like, there's actually joy in suffering. It's like weird, but there's joy in suffering. And so, like, I actually want to fail. And not just, like, in all areas. Like, when me and Joseph get in a fight, I actually get excited. Like, it's weird. I get excited because I'm like, yes, an opportunity for our marriage to grow. Like, let's go. And, like, yeah, it sucks going through it, of course, when you get in a fight. Like, yeah, it sucks, right? Like, you feel you're being attacked maybe sometimes, or sometimes names are thrown out there. But I had this belief. I'm like, no. I know on the other side of this fight is a better version of our marriage. Where some couples, they get in fights, and they're like, oh, yeah, we just fell out of love. You just stop trying. You stop caring, right? You thought the fights were bad. No, the fights are just an indicator of where you need to grow as a couple. Because everybody fights. Yeah. Everybody fights, Sorry, I went off on a tangent there. But
yeah, not only relationships, but like brothers and sisters, family members. Like, yeah, that's how you grow.
And think about your best friends. Some of your best friends in your life.
Yeah,
you probably fight.
all the time.
All the fight. Jordan's one of my best friends. We have fought all the time.
Yeah.
I remember one time I fought with Jake. Like, Jake is normally a very happy person.
Yeah.
There was one time I actually saw him get, like, legitimately pissed. And it was, like, the one and only time. But it strengthened our friendship, because I was like, oh, my gosh, I just saw you actually get pissed. Like, let's go.
That's funny. So, John, you talked about how the Marines changed your life. That was, like, a defining moment in your life. What I've never really asked you or heard the story about is what happened after you got out of the Marines? What was the next move for Mr. Soriano?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to do 20 years in the Marine Corps initially. Like the first 2.5 years I was in the Marine Corps, I was like all about it, dude. If you ever met me, I was like a super Marine. I was like super bought in.
Mm-hmm.
And anything I've done, I've
Mm-hmm.
always been all in. That's always been my attitude. But then I actually came across network marketing, and I did VIMA when I was in the Marine Corps. And that was the first time in my life I was introduced to personal development. And prior to that, I had believed this kind of narrative of like, oh, go to school, get a degree, get a good job, or do 20 years and then retire, right? That was the belief. That was the
American
narrative I
dream.
bought. Yeah, I was like, cool. That's just what people do, right? I never thought of myself as like making a lot of money, and all that. And I was comfortable in the Marine Corps. They provided for me, and I had good friends, and I had a pretty good setup. And I was good at it. I was good at being a Marine. I excelled in everything I did. I was actually the guy in the Marine Corps, like for my job. Like I actually oversaw a warehouse branch, and I would have officers coming to me asking for help on like tracking certain shipments and all that because I was part of the logistics. And so, anyways, all that to say, I then did network marketing. I was introduced to personal development. That's when I first listened to Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar. And for the first time ever, I was like exposed to this belief of like, I can be anything I want, you know? And I was like, huh, this is interesting. And then I came across The Secret. I don't know if you like the book, The Secret. It was the law of attraction essentially.
Okay.
And it was this little movie that came out in like 2011. It was like, anyways, and I saw that movie and it blew my mind. Like this whole concept of like, wait, what? I can just think about what I want and I can have it. And that was the first time I was just like introduced to like actually thinking for myself. Because up until then, I had been told what to think. And I think most people stay there. Mm-hmm. They're told what to think, but most people don't ever step out and be like, no. Let me actually become more aware of my life and then let me actually think for myself. And so when I started thinking for myself, I was like, actually, no, I don't want to be in the Marine Corps. I actually don't want to be told what to do, when to do it, how long to do it. I don't want to be told I'm only worth $40,000 a year. I don't want to be told I can only take vacation 2 weeks of the year, And so that last year I was in the Marine Corps, I made a promise to myself. I'm like, this is the last time I will ever work for somebody else. And in the sense of like literally someone telling me exactly how my life should be. Not to say like obviously I still submit to this day under like Luke and Doug, right? So I don't mean like I'll never have a boss or anything like that, but just the Marine Corps would literally tell you like, cool, you gotta be here from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. Stuff like that. And so when I got out, I was like, I went all into network marketing. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. I saw guys making great money in it. I love the personal development. I love the community. That boat sank. The FDA rated VIMA and anyways, that ended. And then so after it ended, I was like there was like this maybe 8-month period where I was in this limbo where I didn't know what I was going to do. I actually started a fitness apparel business. I definitely knew that I wanted to work for myself. Mm-hmm. Like I definitely knew that, maybe I should say work for myself. I want to say I wanted to bet on myself. I didn't want to bet on the government. I didn't want to bet on this employer. I wanted to bet on myself. Like that's what I knew I wanted to do. I wanted to be like, no, if I'm going to fail, it's because of me. But if I'm going to succeed, it's also because of me. And so I actually started this fitness apparel business. After this, I'll actually show you the video, dude. You'll get a kick out of it. But I actually started this fitness apparel business, and it did pretty well. Like I sold T-shirts, I had ambassadors, I had athletes. Like it did pretty well. Like I did it for a good year and a half. And I had a Shopify store, and again, for not knowing what I was doing, It was actually like pretty good. But that wasn't going anywhere, and it wasn't giving me fulfillment. And so I remember one time I felt God say, hey, you need to give this up, and I have something better for you. And so I gave it up, and it was the hardest thing because it was like my baby. Mm-hmm. And a month later is when I got the call of like, hey, there's this thing called there's solar, store to door. It's everything we're looking for. You should do it. And I was like, cool, I'm in. And then the rest is history. That's awesome. So yeah, I would say personal development is what kind of got me into solar. Mm-hmm. It was the bridge between the Marine Corps and entrepreneurship, because when I was in the Marine Corps, I was like all in. I was like 20 years, I'm gonna retire. I'm gonna be a master sergeant, or maybe an officer. Like I was like all in, dude. But in the last year, I was like, nope, definitely not my thing. Like I'm gonna go into entrepreneurship.
It's cool. Yeah, I never heard that story. So glad to know it. I know with myself, before I started doing door to door, I've always been kind of like a salesman. But one job that I think helps me a lot is I was a bartender for a while, and so being a bartender, a lot of people think it's easy, and it can be easy. But the number one, or at least a couple qualities you have to have, is you have to be able to deal with stupid people. And you have to be able to do it with a smile.
Yeah.
And like you said, you have to have a high adversity quotient, because people that go out to eat, not a lot of people are not nice to their service industry people, and they are just demanding. They go out to eat, they think that they can just tell you to do whatever you want, and being able to deal with that with a smile is something that I think translated into me being good at this job.
Yeah.
Is there a job that maybe you had in the past that wasn't sales that you think plays a big role in your success today?
Yeah, working at Chipotle, I would say.
Really?
Yeah, I actually did Chipotle right before the Marine Corps. Actually, most people don't know this, but right before I enlisted in the Marine Corps, but I wasn't able to go to boot camp for 10 months. So for 10 months, I was like, cool, I got to do something, right? So I actually found a job at Chipotle, and I was there for about 8 months total. And when I got hired, though, I never told my general manager that I was technically about to, this is like a temporary job, because I was like, he won't hire me if I tell him that. And so I started excelling at Chipotle, and he was already talking to me about like, oh, I can see you being a general manager in the next 2 years. And it's like, they pay $100,000, this and that. And I remember I met with my brother, and I was like, I don't know, do I go the Marine Corps route, or do I go the Chipotle route? Because I was like, again, I did well. Like, I got a pay raise pretty fast, and again, my boss was like, I can see you essentially taking my job in like the next year or two. And so I remember it's just crazy thinking how different my life would have been had I chosen the other one, because I was like 50-50.
Yeah.
Because I love Chipotle. Like I can eat Chipotle every single day, and when you work there, you get a free meal every single time. So literally, I'm having Chipotle. I was working 5 days a week. Every day, I'm having a free Chipotle, and I was getting triple steak, double guac, because it's all free. Like as an employee, I don't know if they still do that, but at least when I did it, that's how it was. And so I was like, I don't know, which one do I go? And of course, I chose the Marine Corps route. I was like, no, I gotta go there. And then when I told my GM that, he was like heartbroken. He's like, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't think you would hire me. So all that to say, definitely that was like the first type of responsibility I really had. Because up until then, I did have some jobs, but like I did work as a janitor for 3 years when I was in high school. So it's funny because I would go to my school, but then I would go and clean another school. It was like this private, really rich, all boys school. My mom worked there, so that's how I got the job. But my mom was my boss. So like, it was pretty laxed, Like my mom would let me come in late sometimes. She would let me leave early, and I would say I would leave late. She's my mom. So like, although that was a good job, I had it for 3 years. Like I didn't have a level of accountability because my mom was my boss.
Yeah.
And so, but Chipotle was like the first time where like I had accountability, where I was responsible, and I'm grateful for those like 7-8 months I worked there. I learned a lot, and it's funny because every time I'm not going to Chipotle, it's like a little bit nostalgic for me because I'm like, I remember being here.
That's funny. Being on the other side of the glass.
Yeah.
My dad was also my first boss, but it was a very different experience, and it was very similar. So my job was to clean his office building once a week, me and my little brother. But he was super strict. It was on Sundays, and he would wake me up, and that was back when I would go to church every week, and so we would have to go before church. And he was super strict. He actually fired me. He was the first person to ever hire and fire me. But he taught me a lot of lessons, and that I still think about and use today. So shout out to Pops for firing me and lighting a spark under me to go. Because after that, I was like, I'll go make my own money. I don't need my dad.
Yeah.
And like I was 15, 16, whatever. And then I've been working ever since.
Yeah.
Kind of a deep question here. What is because this General John, it seems like you have you have really honed in and you've found your purpose. It
Right.
sounds like, right? What is the moment where that happened? Is there a moment where that happened? And if there is, what is it?
Yeah, I would say there's two moments. So General John, the story of it is I didn't give myself that name. I didn't like one day wake up and was like, oh, I'm gonna start going by that. It actually happened very very organically. So I did a business apprenticeship for Awaken back in 2018, and it was 12 of us there. So it's like business focused, where we get coaching and mentorship from other people that are successful in business. And it was like a great 6-month like coaching program. Well, while I was there, I don't know what started it, but Michael Gutschmidt, he was in there with me, and one day he just randomly said, "What's up, General John?" And I was like, "Okay, that's weird." Like, all right, like, and I just went along with it, you know. And he kept calling me that. He just started calling me General John, right? And he was my district manager at the time at Legacy, and then people in the apprenticeship started calling me General John, and I didn't like it at first. I was like, "This is really corny." Like, well, why are you calling me General John? And then people in Legacy started calling me General John. And then over the course of a few months, people started calling me General John here and there, or like, you know, or the General, you know, all this. And it was just a name that kind of picked up organically, but I wasn't a fan of it. I was like, I kind of went along with it, but I was like, yeah, whatever. It's just one of those names that people would say, but I wouldn't think much of it. And then one day, I went to the 10X conference for Grant Cardone. It was January of 2019. I went there, or February, I think it was February of 2019. I went there, and Grant Cardone started talking about brands, about like, what is your brand? What do you want to represent? And in that moment, I felt like it was like the Holy Spirit just spoke to me and was like, your brand needs to be General John. And then the Holy Spirit revealed to me, he's like, why do you have a resistance towards it? And I had this kind of moment of vulnerability with myself. I was like, well, I don't feel like I live up to the name of a general. Because when you think of a general, you think of like a really masculine, male, strong, confident, has a command presence, right? When you think of a general, like a real life military general, you don't think of some weak little boy.
Yeah, very
right?
stoic.
Yeah, you think of a very strong, like when you're around them, you're like, okay, oh shit, I gotta be like, you know, that's what you think of, right? And so I was like, that's not me. Like that's not, and I didn't feel worthy of that name because I didn't feel like it. And, you know, Grant Cardone just talked about a brand, and it's like, but I feel like I had this moment with God where it's like, okay, you may not be that now, but why can you believe that you are that in your head? And so like, that was a moment where it clicked for me. I'm like, I'm like, what is wrong? Like, sure, I may not be that now, but why can't I believe that I am that in here, and that one day I will truly feel like I am that in real life? Because I didn't feel like, and that's why I didn't want to own that name, because I was like, it sounded very like it just didn't align. I was like, I don't feel worthy of that, you know? And so that's really when it was birthed. That's when I was like, you know what? I'm going to own that name. And I'm going to believe that I really am a general. I'm going to believe that that's what I'm working towards. That like every day I'm going to ask myself, how can I be more like a general? How can I show up for my people? How can I have a command presence? How can I inspire? Because when I think of a general, right, like again, they're strong, but they can speak vision. You know, they can handle hard stuff, right? And it's funny too, because even recently, like the last few months, I feel like my missing component of the general brand has been my fitness. Because when you think also of a general, you don't think of a guy that's overweight. Yeah, of course. And so like back in November, I had that like realization. I'm like, I finally have felt like, okay, cool. Like I'm living that, you know, and obviously there's always levels to it, but I felt like my fitness is the only component where it's really weak. And I'm like, if I'm going to call myself a general, if I'm going to talk about doing hard things, I can't be someone that's not in shape. I have to be in shape. And I'm still on this journey, but I've made long progress since November of last year. And just keep waiting. 6 months from now, I'm going to have even more of a radical transformation, because that's like, and that's the power of a brand. It's like, you don't have to live it right now, but you can kind of believe in your mind that you are becoming that. And I have this mindset of myself of like becoming a general, right? Becoming a man that can command people. And when I say command, I don't mean like tell them what to do, but just like a general has an army, right, of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. And so like and now this aligns with Valor, because, you know, right now I have my vision is 10,000 men and women of Valor. That's my mission. And, you know, right now we're sitting at roughly like 600. I count the married people and the kids too. That's how I'm keeping track of it. So I'm obviously like only 5% of the way there, but I gave myself a decade to fulfill that goal. And so, so I mean, that's General John. And then for Valor, I feel like it's tied in because the character in the Bible that I've always related to is King David. You know, King David is like, outside of Jesus Christ, of course, like he's like the character that I relate to the most. And there's this really powerful story where when David's on the run from Saul, he goes to the cave of Adullam, and the Bible talks about how 400 men come to his aid. And these men are described as like broken, in debt, discontent men, like men you don't want to be around, you know? But then a whole book later, like a decade later, these same men, now David's king of Israel, these same men are being described as mighty men of valor. And I remember when I read that, like God spoke to me and he was like, ask yourself 2 questions. Number 1, what kind of leader did David have to be to transform these men from broken into men of valor? And then number 2, what kind of culture had to happen? Because you can't mentor 400 people. So there had to be some type of culture of like accountability, of men sharpening men. And God spoke to me and was like, that's what I want you to create. Like, talk about purpose. And God said, I'm going to send you broken people. I'm going to send you people that are in debt. I'm going to send you people that are discontent with their life. And your purpose is to transform them into a man or a woman of valor. And dude, when like Mark Twain talks about like the 2 most important days of your life are the day you're born, but the day you find out why, that was the moment. This was maybe 2-ish years ago. That was truly the moment when I found out why I was born, why I was put on this earth. And so like the 2 aligned together, the whole like General John, but then the whole Valor, they aligned together because I'm like, cool, like I've been put on this earth to help men and women become men and women of valor. And again, valor means having courage in the face of adversity. So like that's my purpose, and that's kind of like the origin of how it came about.
Great story. What are some key factors that, because I mean, as you grow, Ashton I met with I asked him what his why is, and he says when you get to a high level, you need to have a bag of whys. You need to have a different why to grab onto, maybe each day, each hour, whatnot, because you can always justify things. So as you progress, what are some things that you're adding into your bag of whys?
Well, I mean, I guess I have a different outlook. I mean, I wouldn't say I have a bag of whys. I mean, I align my life into 4 pillars, you know, faith, family, fitness, finance. And there's a why within each one. I actually hired a leadership coach a year ago, and him and I go through, like I have a whole blueprint I can show you after on my phone where I essentially list out my vision in each of those pillars and kind of what I want my life to look like. So I align my life really in those 4, you know, like, cool, I have a why for my family, right? Like what do I want my marriage to look like? What do I want my fatherhood to look like? I have a why for my fitness, right? What do I want that to look like? So I align my life into just 4 pillars. And because I believe everything fits there, like your faith, your family, your fitness, your finance. I think everything in your life fits under 4 of those. And for me, legacy and solar and valor and all that align under the finance one, right? I guess a little bit the fitness because they kind of go together. Actually, they all kind of go together. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I would say I don't know if by a bag of whys you mean a lot of them. I don't have a lot. Those are my 4. It's like, cool. What's my why with my family? With my relationship with my creator? What's my why with my relationship with my wife, my kids? What's my why with myself? Right, that's what fitness really represents. It's like what relationship do you have with yourself? You know, because some people, they go to the gym because they hate themselves. Some people go to the gym because they love themselves. Which one is it, right? But then also the 4th one is finance, right, which ties into more like your work, right, which for me is solar.
Mm-hmm. And that actually ties into what I wanted to talk about next, and because one of your key your key values of valor. Sorry, one of your 7 values of valor is you can have it all.
That's right.
And you live that, and it's by, like you said, your 4 pillars of faith, family, fitness, finance, and it's in that order. You say, right? So what are some things that you do to help you achieve being well-rounded and having it all? Because a lot of people think that balance is hard, or you have to go all in on something, and it's impossible to have it all. You have to have a niche, you have to do this. So you kind of go against the grain there by saying no, like you can excel in faith, family, fitness, and finance.
Yeah.
So what are some tips that you have, or some things that you do to help you achieve doing everything?
Yeah, I would say adopt this principle of eat the pie. Okay. In other words, whatever it is you're doing, just be all in on it. What happens is sometimes people try to do the faith one, but then they're still thinking about their family. They're still thinking about their fitness. They're still thinking about like, oh, I didn't go to the gym today. And then they're not really all into that one thing. So whatever it is you do, just be all in into be all into it, right? Like this morning, I know like you text me, right? I decided, no, I'm going to be all in with my family, right? Because I knew I only had 2 hours with them before I had to leave. And so, but what most people do is like they're with their family, but like their phone's still near them. And so when it buzzes, they check it. So they're not really all in with their family. Right. And so I think as you on this journey of you can have it all, like, yeah, like there's no such thing as balance. Like you just got to do your best to have harmony with all 4 of those. Like I don't believe in balance. I believe in harmony, to where it's like, cool, just have this harmony that they're all 4 are like flowing together. They're all interconnected. Like that's my goal, is to find a way to interconnect all of them. Like they're not these 4 separate pillars that are their own entity, right? Like I try to find a way to incorporate my fitness with my wife too. Right? Or the fitness one, like this past Saturday, I went and I ran with Balin and King, right? I took them on a run, and cool, like that's harmony, right? It's a way, how can they be harmonious with one another instead of looking at them as like individual entities? It's like, how can I also make sure that they're harmonious with one another? But whatever it is you do, just eat the whole pie. Just be all in. You know, like I think part of it is also just managing, like having good self-management. Like 24 hours are going to pass whether you want it or not. Your goal should be is how can I maximize every hour that I have? Like cut out the things that don't serve you. You know, like I cut out alcohol indefinitely now because I'm like, what's the point of drinking? Drinking just makes me feel tired after 30 minutes of drinking, and then I tend to sleep longer after I drink. So what I'm wasting, like if I'm sleeping 10 hours a day, that's literally 40% of my life, 38% of my life, you know, like that's a lot. That's a lot of time. So yeah, so I just said eat the whole pie. You know, if you're with your family, be all in with your family. If you're at work, be all in at work. And sometimes I communicate that to even Josie as a married man. If I know, like for example, when I was at the retreat, I told her straight up, I was like, hey, I'm about to do this, this, and this. You probably won't hear from me for the next 3 hours. Cool. I communicate that to her. Now that allows me to be all in. Versus some people, they're like, oh, well, I got to talk to my wife. Like, you know, when if I'm really busy, like if I'm doing stuff, like, cool, she knows, like right now I'm all in here, right? Threw my phone over there. I put it on do not disturb. So that way I can be all in with this. And whatever else I got going on can wait. So I would say, like, just do that. And you know, we're not going to get it right all the time. Like, I don't get it right all the time, but you just do the best you can.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that Andy Elliott said at his event is be where your feet are. And that goes with what you just said. Yeah, just be where your feet are. A lot of people are not, their head is not where their feet are. Mm-hmm. They're thinking about, like you said, when they're at the gym, they're thinking about their finance. But then when they're at work, they're thinking about their family. But then when they're with their family, they're thinking about their faith. And so being where your feet are is huge for any aspect of life, right? One thing that I struggle with doing all this is in having it all. Because I do believe the same thing. You've instilled that in me, thankfully. But organization. So what are some things that you do to stay organized with everything you have going on? You're a really busy guy. You have a lot more going on than I do. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm struggling with organization. So I know you have to be implementing some sort of strategies to stay organized with your life, right?
Yeah, no, that's a few things. Number one, I think is learning the art of delegation. There's an art to it. I think for a long time, I struggled with that. I had to control everything, and I found it hard to delegate. And I've learned that if somebody can do something 80% as good as you, then you need to delegate it. And there's different levels to this, but you need to ask yourself, what are the things that are the most important that will push the business forward that only I can do, right? Okay. And that's different with every season that you're in, right? Like right now, the season you're in, okay, is cool. you should be the main one that's pouring into your people, right? But eventually you can get to a point where you now have a few people that you raised up to where now they can be like, you don't see me mentoring any people anymore, right? Because I've learned to delegate that and be like, cool, I've raised enough people now to where now they can go ahead and mentor other people. But once upon a time, I did that, right? Correlations, right? Once upon a time, I used to run all sorts of correlations, right? I was like running every correlation. I planned it. Now I'll run a correlation like per office, like maybe once a month, right? And even that, I'm just doing the training. But because I learned to be like, cool, let me raise up someone that can do it 80% as good as you. So like I said, that's what delegation looks like. Delegation isn't like necessarily telling people what to do. You have to do the work first in raising someone up, right? And then as long as they can do it 80% as good as you, that's good enough. What some people do is like, well, they can't do it as good as me, so like I'm not gonna delegate. No, if they're at least 80%, just and then be there the initial launch, right? Give them some feedback, some coaching. Hey, next time maybe try this or do this, because then that's gonna free up your time to do what you need to do, right? Like for me with my level, right? My time is best spent on big picture stuff, right? Events, retreats, Valor DNA, Valor conferences, recruiting big teams, right? Checking in on the high level leaders and ensuring that they're doing good, right? Like the other day I was out with Christian Morgan. Great. Christian Morgan's one of my district managers. Like these are the guys I recognize, like the guys that need to see me the most are my district managers and above, you know? And so I recognize that that's where my time is best spent now, right? Once upon a time, my time was best spent with setters, with closers, with mentors, right? But as you grow and develop, you got to learn to delegate and just trust that people will do it just as good as you. So I would say delegate. Number two is just literally work your calendar. You know, not 100%, I'm not the best at this, but I would like to say I'm pretty good at it, is put everything in your calendar and then just live by your calendar. And so, that's a simple one. And then three is like at some point, maybe get an assistant. Like having like Holly in my life has been great. Mm-hmm. She's been able to de-lever me from a lot of things. But don't be so quick to get one. Yeah. I think you should get an assistant when you feel like the small little things are taking you, that are kind of important, are taking you away from the big things. And so at any level you're at, you really need to understand, we really need to ask yourself is, what are my money-making activities? We call them MMAs, money-making activities. My money-making activities are different today than they were 5 years ago. Like my MMA actually isn't even selling a solar deal anymore. It used to be once upon a time. Yeah. But I recognize that I can actually have a bigger impact in my finances by recruiting a team over than by selling a solar deal myself, right? Or instead of selling a solar deal, I can go and speak life into one of my leaders, because then by me doing that, that can increase that sales volume by 20%, which might be even more income for me than one solar account, right? So it's like, ask yourself, okay, what are my MMAs, where I'm at right now? Like, what are the things that will push my income forward? And then spend time doing those things, and then everything else, learn to delegate. Learn to either cut it off or delegate.
Yeah. MMAs, money-making activities. That's a good one. And I was just listening to a podcast talking about the delegating with Alex Hormozy. I'm sure you know who that is. And he said something along the lines of the most successful businesses are ones that can eventually run on their own. And there are people that start businesses who, like you said, they hold on. They're like, oh, they can't do this as good as me. They can't do this as good as me. Yep. And those are the businesses that usually end up not making it as far, because they don't have the art of letting go, as like you just said, of being able to delegate the tasks and eventually get to the point where, like he said, a good business doesn't need me at all eventually. Like I should be able to exit the business and it runs on its own.
Yeah, and it's scary, right? Because it's like, it's your baby. And it took me a while, because for so long I had full control over it. Full control over how correlations was ran, full control over the group me, full control over everything. And you get to a point where it's scary to be like, now I'm about to relinquish and trust my baby with somebody else. It's scary, but you can't grow unless you're willing to let go. And people will surprise you. I'm a huge advocate of, if you give people responsibility, well, let me rephrase that. If you give the right person responsibility, like, they'll surprise you. You know, people have surprised me when I've given them responsibility and empowered them and been like, hey, I'm trusting you with this. People, going back to the whole pressures of privilege, when people feel that pressure, they most of the time will surprise you and actually go on and do great things. And if they don't, that's okay. You're there to pick them back up. You're there to kind of be like, hey, it's all right, get back up. It's all right. Let's refocus. So, because yeah, you can't scale. Because I can't be at 8 correlations a week. That's how many correlations happen a week.
Yeah.
Actually, no, sorry, 12 now.
Yeah.
I can't be at 12 correlations a week, right? Every office has 2 correlations, so it means there's 12. I can't. John Serrano cannot be leading 12 correlations every single week.
Yeah.
So the only way I can grow and scale is by, doing that, or by delegating.
Very true. I'm going to tell a story now, going back to my younger days in Legacy. Super impactful trip for me was when we went on that deep sea fishing trip to Mexico. You remember that?
You want to go home?
Yeah, exactly. Monster. So I it hurts me to say, I actually didn't even earn that trip. I didn't even deserve. Honest, we were just living in the moment. That was an incredible moment for me, being surrounded by the top producers in the entire office and learning some nuggets from them. I remember even learning a couple of one-liners that I still use in my clothes this day from Jack and Dylan Rush and people like that. But the most important moment of that trip for me was I woke up one morning and you were already awake and you were outside, and I walked outside. You were sitting at a table and you were reading Think and Grow Rich. And I'm not a reader. I've never had, even as a kid, that was my worst subject in school. I was a math and science kid. I didn't read. I read the Spark Notes if I had to do a book report and whatnot. I didn't read. But you were like, man, you should really read this book. And I was like, okay. So I don't read, like I said, but I listened to it. I downloaded it on Audible and I listened to that book, and it changed my life. It changed my vision. And like you said in the book earlier it was a book, right? Called The Secret. You just thought,
yeah, it was a movie.
Oh, okay.
But I think it's a book too. Yeah.
Yeah. But you talked about how you can speak your life into existence. You can manifest. It's really what it taught me, is about manifestation.
Yeah.
All of that is long-winded to say. Are there any other books that have been super impactful on your growth that you would recommend me and anyone else that's in my position reading?
Yeah, two come to mind. One's like a story, more of like a story fictional kind of book. One's more of a like teaching book. The first one is The Alchemist. I read that in 2015, I believe, and it changed my life. And without ruining the story, because it's actually a really good story, it's not so much like a self-help book. It's an actual like story that you read, but it has a very profound message. And essentially the message is this guy Santiago is looking for an alchemist, and an alchemist is someone that can turn nothing into gold in that story. And so he's looking for him, right? Because he's looking to get gold, right? He's trying to be rich. And so, again, without ruining the whole like plot, the core fundamental part of that book is that everything we're actually looking for is closer than we think. We think success is this thing that's far out there. We think success is like, oh, when I achieve this milestone, I'll be happy. When and the whole message of the book is this Santiago guy, as he goes on this journey, like literally travels hundreds of miles to find this alchemist and learn how can he make nothing into gold, and the message is like all of us can be alchemists. All of us can turn nothing into gold. All of us can turn our trauma into gold. All of us can turn where we're at right now into gold. What's crazy is within literally a 1 mile radius of us right now, Isaac, there's literally So it talks about like, hey, these are the 4 agreements that you need to make within your life, and that these have to be agreements that like you believe are objective truths, in which they are, and the main one that always stuck with me was nothing is ever personal. Like nothing's personal. People are quick to take anything anyone says personal. And I've had to adopt this mindset of like nothing anyone says to me, anyone does to me is personal. It's not, and I've learned to practice this philosophy of true empathy is believing that if I was the other person, if I had the same exact upbringings, experiences, parents, everything, I would have done the same thing they did. So if someone hurt me, empathy is being like, you know what? If I was you, I would have done the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so actually, I'm not mad at you. I forgive you because you did only what you thought was best. I remember when the whole Sunder situation happened, I had to believe that, you know what? The guys that went over there, if I was them, I would have done the same thing. And they just acted, and what they felt was truly best for them. And I can't hate anybody on that. Mm-hmm. And so like that's what that book taught me, is understanding that, hey, nothing is personal. We're really quick to take things personal and get mad at people and hold resentment and be like, oh, you did. And really all along, if you were that person, you probably would have done the same exact thing. And so it's just believing like, hey, you know what? I'm going to choose to practice empathy. I'm going to choose to be like, no, like if I was you, I would have done the same thing. So like we're all in this thing called life together, and we're all doing the best that we can. Like I go back to what I said earlier, like I believe people are inherently good, and that people are just doing the best that they can, with what they've been giving. Yeah. So anyways, those 2 books I would say like have been really instrumental. I mean, there's many more, but those 2 books, The Alchemist and The 4 Agreements.
Perfect. I actually haven't read either of them, so I'll get right on that. In your illustrious career, Mr. Soriano, what is on the spot one moment that sticks out to you as your proudest moment, your I'm here moment? Because you're a Hall of Famer, for a legacy Hall of Famer. You've achieved a lot. You know where you're at. But what was the moment that gave you the confidence where you're like, you know what, like I am the guy?
That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I feel like recently, I mean, one that comes up is just recently with them 3. I feel like that was a test of my character, a test of what I'm capable of. And so, and I had a lot of faith. Like, although back in February, March, when you saw me, I was very optimistic about it and very like, we can do this. Like, there were certain days where internally I was like, is solar really over? Am I going to get through this? Like, is the team about to shrink? Am I going to have to pivot and become a traveling freaking sales organization, which I didn't want to do? And I had to, and so I would have those days, but you wouldn't see it, right? Because I recognize that to everybody else, I had to be strong and be the voice of, like we can get through this. But I would say like getting through that season, those like 2-3 months were pretty hard. But getting through that season was really like more recently when I truly like, I have never felt more like a true general than the last few months, because I'm like, man, I've gone through some hard stuff in the last few years. Like, I feel like every year there's been some type of crisis in solar. Like in 2018, there was a crisis of like we were losing a lot of reps because that's when the red line model got introduced. 2019, Sunder happened. 2020, COVID happened. 2021 is when, like those 2 guys like decided to try to take people, right? And then this year was the year of NEM 3. And I'm like, I finally reflected and I'm like, man, I've actually gone through all of those. But this one was different because this one I did it alone, where the other ones I had someone to lean on. Like when Sunder happened, I had like Carlos to lean on. When 2018 thing happened, I had Michael Gushman to lean on. And like all the other crises were different because I had someone to lean on. Where this one, I felt like I walked through it alone. I felt like I was alone and trying to figure out how to navigate through it. And after that, I was like, I felt this sense of like, dude, I can do anything I set my mind to. So I would say like that was my moment for me to just be like, heck yeah, we got through that, and now we're like winning. Now we're like expanding. Like we're growing. We went from 4 to 6 offices And there's so many more people that are now interested and want to hear about what legacy, and it's just crazy. Like, we're still growing, and it was just because of that choice of like, I'm going to get through it. So I would say that probably comes up for me the most.
It was a huge moment, and I will attest to the fact that you have been a general through this. You've led a lot of us into success, and thank you for that, man.
It's an honor.
I like to ask this question. I'm going to ask everybody that comes on here this question. In your industry, which is solar sales, who do you consider the GOAT?
That's a really good question. I've never even thought about that. I mean, it's tough, right? Because there's different ways you can define a GOAT.
Yeah.
Like, there's a GOAT on sales, but there are some guys who are like killers at sales, but they're not the best leaders. But then there's also some guys who are not the best salespeople, or I would say not the best, but they're like maybe mid-level, average, but they're like really remarkable leaders. So it's like, how do you define a GOAT, I guess? I mean, I guess overall, I mean, I'm biased in this, but I guess the true GOATs would have to be Doug and Luke. Like, honestly, like, I mean, really, because, when I think about what I've gone through and weathered, and I'm like, I feel like they've gone through that and much more, because I'm just one division of all of legacy, and I know some of the stuff they've walked through, some of the challenges they've gone through, and they've been able to weather it all. And so I feel like as a collective, in terms of if I was to add everything up from like sales to leadership to operations to really running a business to dealing with all sorts of people to being, stabbed in the back many times, and through all of that, they have like succeeded. And so I would say they're probably the true GOATs. They are.
Shout out Luke and Doug.
Luke and Doug, yeah.
That was the answer that Ashton gave as well.
Oh, good. Yeah, good. I was thinking like someone that encompasses all of that. Yeah. Now, if I was to say like a sales GOAT, different story, but
Yeah, and it, like you said, in our value, do hard things, and I think something that's important is it's not just do hard things, it's do hard things consistently. Because everybody out there, people who are sitting on their couch, people that are doing everyone's done something hard. You know what I mean? Everyone can be like, oh, I did that one time. But the people that are truly successful are people that do hard things every single day and can live through that without giving up, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, when you're done with this sales thing, with the General John thing in general, you hang up your jersey in the rafters, you're retired. What would you like your legacy to be?
Well, first of all, I don't believe in retiring. I don't think I ever will do that.
Okay.
Because I am so bought into my purpose that I'll do it until I die. I'll never hit a point where I'm like 80, 90 and be like, all right, I'm done. Because one of our values is also enjoy the journey. All right. I don't believe that joy is this destination. You just enjoy along the way. Like someone that I feel like models that really well is like President Donald Trump. Like, you look at the dude, he was a billionaire, has accomplished more than 99.9% of the world. And yet he still decided at an old age to be like, I'm going to go run for the hardest job in the whole world. The most dangerous job in the world is being president of the United States. And that's kind of like what I want to model and be like, no, until I die, I'm not going to stop pursuing my goal. And I know my mission, I know my purpose is to raise men and women of valor. Like, that's my mission. And until I die, I won't do that. So, and as far as so when I die, like what I want my legacy like to say, what I want my tombstones to be is that it's like, I want to represent a lifestyle that you can have it all. I want to solve the masculine crisis that we have right now. Like, my big picture is that I do believe that we have a crisis in the world where men are losing their sense of masculinity. There are men that are confused of what their gender is. They're confused if they even want to get married. There are men that are like, oh, I don't believe in marriage or stuff like that. Or they think that being a man is all about how many women you can sleep with and how much you can drink and how much money you make. And so I'm on a mission to disrupt that and redefine. Actually, not redefine because it's already been defined, but go back to what a man really is. you know, and a man is someone that loves God. A man is someone that loves his wife, loves his children, loves their community, and, you know, makes a positive impact in the community. And so until I die, I'll be doing that. But I want my legacy to be that when I die, there's going to be now thousands, if not millions, of other men and women too, but specifically men, that go on and be like, cool, go be the change, you know? Because how I believe how we make a change in this world is not by impacting nations or states or cities, but I think it's by impacting the family, you know? And if I can help men become better husbands, better fathers, better business leaders, then if you multiply that by millions, that's how you impact cities. That's how you impact nations and states and stuff like that. So yeah, so till I die, man, I'll never hit a point where I can reflect it, but I'll be in heaven looking at my funeral and having it be more of a celebration of life than one of death. So
that's awesome. So what's next for General John? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that, because actually I was talking about that yesterday with Josie. Dude, what's next is I really want to take the whole concept of Valor to the next level. There's like a little sneak peek, but I did a Valor War Room experience in January, and it's been on my heart to do that as an actual business and actually put on an experience like that, because it was so impactful to our leadership team, and I felt so alive when I was doing it. Like, I got to put on like a militant personality, you know, and kind of be like a drill instructor and yell at people. And it was so fun to yell at Stetson. It felt so good to yell at him. I told him that. So yeah. He was like, yeah, he's like, I can tell you enjoy yelling at me. I was like, yeah, I did. I'm sorry, I did. And so what's next for me is that, man. I don't have all the answers yet. I don't know what it looks like, but I want to create an experience that people can go to for 2 or 3 days and walk away transformed. Because that's all it takes, man. Like, it just takes one experience for someone to radically change their life.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely. I've invested in events and seminars and stuff, and even I've gone for free to the ones that you've put on that are not free for you, that I know you've dumped a lot of resources into.
But it's good because it's helped me learn, though, and which is why now I feel comfortable. I'm like, cool, I can put on an event because I've done so many of them. And now I'm like, cool, I can actually probably launch it as an actual business.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that.
I'll be there. VIP. I'll buy my ticket too. Last thing, I'm gonna end every podcast with this for the people watching and myself. Give me a challenge to do, like as a salesman. Door-to-door salesman, what's a challenge, like a 10-day or a 30-day challenge for me?
That's a good one. Challenge for you. Well, let me first ask you a question. I mean, where are you at right now in your life? Like, what are you trying to accomplish, just so I can align it with where you're trying to go?
I am trying at this point to build leaders.
Okay.
So that I can do my thing and have my office and I mean, just like you, my big mission in life is to give back, and my definition of greatness is teaching others to be able to teach others to be able to teach others, and that's how you pass on a legacy. And so right now I've been struggling with it too, but not just creating closers or salesmen, but creating future leaders.
Okay. What are the 3 things in your life that you feel right now that you do are holding you back from achieving that?
One thing holding me back is probably my own. I'm not really being the rabbit at the moment because I am focused on a lot of other things at once right now. That I feel like there are some new people that maybe don't remember or haven't seen that I have done what they're trying to do in being a top performer. And so I think I'm lacking there. I know I'm lacking there, that I need to go out and be more of an example, show them more than tell them.
Sure.
Right. One thing that I do think that I'm good at is I care. Like, I truly do care about everybody that's underneath me, working with me, above anybody. I really care about their their life and what their whys are and what their goals are, and I want to see them succeed. It's not selfish. I mean, obviously there are some things that are selfish. I do want to have my own office. I do want to grow and become a leader, but it's by selfless things that I can do that.
Right. Yeah, cool. So then there lies your answer, right? So the challenge to you would be, I mean, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a time frame, but the challenge for you was, if we have to give a time frame, then in the next 3 months, if you feel you need to be a sales rabbit, then go beat whatever your best month has been. I don't know what your best month ever has been, but go beat that. Go, even if you beat it by 1, it's still a victory, right? To show people. And then I would say, to add to that, go help whoever your like main guy is, whether they're a setter or a closer, go help them also beat their best month.
Yeah.
And so, one's about you, one's about others, and so go beat your best month, and then be like, cool, right now, who's if you had to start an office right now and had to pick an assistant manager, like essentially who would you pick, right? Someone that's like, cool. Not that they have to be perfect and dialed in, but then go help them also beat their best month, right? And you do it by just inspiring, by being like, hey, let's go do it together. Let's go knock together. Cool, you guys can just become car buddies for the next, few weeks or whatever. And anyway, just some ideas. But I would say that would be my challenge to you, is go be your best month and then go help go help that person beat their best month.
Awesome. I will do that. That is part of the plan.
Let's go.
Sure. I will do that. It is competition season.
Come on.
I take Masters very serious.
Come on.
I don't know how it's going to be split up this year, but I will win.
Let's go.
Okay.
I love it.
Remember that.
I remember.
This is on camera. I will win. Okay. I promise you. John, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Always
Thanks
an honor.
for having me.
You're vastly important in my life, and I can't thank you enough. You've done so much for me that you don't even know. Got me to where I am today, and I know we're just starting, and you are gonna be the general to help me level up and get to where I'm supposed to be.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And as always, thank you to Ryan and my folks here at Optic Elements. Y'all have a great day.
Let's go.
Stay tuned.